All right, you guys, I have Sissi here. This is a dear friend of a dear friend, one of my really, really good friends. I was reaching out to her about like just some people who are really creative in her circle and who would be willing to share a little bit about their faith journey. And she told me, you have to talk to Sissi. And so Sissi and my friend Alex, who connected us, they have worked together in New York, and Sissi just has an amazing story. So I'm talking with her tonight, and I also love the difference between our backdrops. I have fake little palm branches behind me, and she has real life. Yeah, beautiful. Look at that. That is Central Park. It's gorgeous. This is my little park that I have right here. It's so pitiful compared to Sissi's backdrop, but it's beautiful. So Sissi, thank you so much for taking this time and just wanting to share your experience with us. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first question, which is basically just tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, my name is Sissi Lu, and I am calling myself a photographer. I'm trying to learn to earn, to
Own
feel
that
comfortable
title.
saying that on that title. But yeah,
Yeah.
I resides in New York City currently. It's my 6th year in the United States, and I came here for school. Somehow, God brought me to the state, and somehow God let me stay and opened up a lot of doors for me to stay in this country so far. So yeah,
That's
we'll see what
amazing.
comes next.
Yeah, absolutely. And so kind of just walk us through a bit of your journey, right? So just kind of starting off with how you experienced, like just knowing what Christianity was, finding your identity and your faith. You know, I think for a lot of us, that's the hardest part. We see so many different church denominations, and it's like, where do I fit in to any of this? And just a little bit of my experience, if you want to call it like church hopping or church shopping, I was jumping from church to church over a span of probably 4 to 6 years, until I really found a place where I could feel seen and a place where I felt like I could actually grow my maturity, my spiritual maturity, and to actually serve in a capacity that allowed my gifts to be utilized. And so it took me some time. And for everyone, that's so different. Like, what does a faith journey look like? So if you can tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure. I mean, the beautiful light just shine on
It's
me.
gorgeous. You have like the perfect like golden glow just basking on you. It's fantastic.
Happened to be.
Yeah, again, you have like natural light. My fan light is on above my ceiling. Like, it's just,
I'm lucky to get out today. Otherwise, my
yeah.
lighting would be horrible.
Right.
I'm so glad to be out. I'm so happy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So,
wonders.
I think it's a great question to ask people, and it's a good thing to think about. So my faith journey, or how I started to become a believer, is actually I was born um, as a Christian. My parents, they asked for God for this baby when they couldn't have a child in their 40s, and it was difficult for them. However, someone told them to pray, and they're not Christians. They've never heard about God, and they ran out of choice. And and you're desperate, you try everything, and you come to God, and maybe that's a way that how God put us into the place. So yeah, they prayed about it. They prayed in the church. They don't know what to pray for. They told God that if whoever he is, give them a baby by the prayer, they will give the baby back to him, and therefore I'm here.
There you are.
Which they don't know what they're praying about, and they don't know how powerful this prayer is.
Yeah.
So growing up, God has been present in every single thing, every single decisions, and every single good or bad, uphill or downhill. He was always present in my life in one way or the other, and which is a blessing. But it took me a long time to really see God myself, because growing up as a Christian, I believe, like, I don't know about everyone here in the States, but in China, first of all, it's not it's not common to be a Christian, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not common to grow up as Christian, and you can't really practice or publicly announce that your faith to anyone. So for me, it's very limited to know what that means
Yeah.
until I was living alone because I graduated high school like 2 years early. So I was living alone in the capital city of China, Beijing, and just learning lessons from a professor there, and living alone by myself, trying to be an adult at 16, age of 16.
Yeah.
Then I realized that there's a lot of things that I don't know, and there's a lot of decisions that I'm just not capable of making myself.
Mm.
In that moment, God was slowly trying to knock my heart open and to
Oh,
tell
yeah.
me who He really is, and
Yeah.
to like really take me as an individual and as like an adult, to recognize Him and to proclaim that He was my Father. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's how it happens. And since then, every decision, small or big, I was I learned in a hard way, which is a bigger story, which I'm not yet feel comfortable to tell. But I
Yeah.
learned that I have to ask God. I have to ask God for every single decision I make,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I ended up here in the States, which was a huge blessing. I don't know how that
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
And even right now, after graduation, starting working, every single thing, it was
Mm-hmm.
God's blessing. It was
Mm.
God's grace that brought me so far as who I am, keeping healthy and
Yeah.
happy, and yeah, blessed with everything I needed in my life. So,
Yeah.
and I guess to the people who wonder what God is to them, I don't know what to say, because God really is so personal. Like,
Yeah.
you have to experience Him. And the only thing I'm sure about is that He wouldn't give up letting, like, trying to get to know you or trying to bring you to Him.
Right.
He will try again and again. If you didn't see Him, you didn't hear Him, He's just gonna try and try and try until that
Yeah.
one day you're like, oh,
It hits
okay.
you. Right.
And then you look back and there's every single sign that you missed, and you just
Mm.
wish, why didn't I see it sooner? Why didn't I was
Yeah.
trying to do it myself? So I guess that's
Right.
just, yeah.
That's so good. And I think that's also a very similar experience that so many people have of what you said. You felt this knocking on your heart, right? And I think that's also something that I can relate to myself. And it's something that's so difficult to actually put into words. But it's just almost like, if you have a roommate or a spouse and they're downstairs cooking something and you open up that door, and that scent of whatever it is just inviting you. It just feels like this
Mhm.
this invitation. And something else that you said that really resonates with me is how you say you can look back and be like, oh my gosh, He was there the whole time.
Yeah.
And I cannot remember who said this quote, which I'm so disappointed about right now, but it just comes to my mind. And he said, I was not a Christian growing up, but now that I found God, I can look back and I see His fingerprints over
Mhm.
all these areas of my life.
For sure.
But in that moment, I missed it. And I think that's what displays God's patience with us, is that He'll wait for us. He's such a gentleman in that way. He will keep inviting us and He'll keep waiting for us. And
Mhm.
so once you kind of have that moment, Sissy, of you're like, okay, here's His fingerprints, I see it, I'm ready for this invitation. How old were you? Were you a child? Were you still, in your young adulthood?
When it really happens, I believe that it might came across my mind like here and there once in a while,
Mm-hmm.
but when it's seriously that, everyone has that moment when you just knock down to a point that you can't control anything, and you're lost every thing that you're trying to hold really really tight, and
Yeah.
then you realize that then you realize God, which is very unfortunate. You have to realize that way. But for me, I'm a stubborn person, and
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's the best way for me. Like God
Right.
knows me, and He knows that I have to really learn my lesson. So
Yeah.
that when that serious time happened, I was the age of 16, 15,
Okay.
16. Yeah. And which I was still like, figuring out, I'm still figuring out life.
Yeah.
But that moment, I was just leaving my parents and just starting to live by myself. Everything just starting to hit all the
Yeah.
reality. And God just really punch you with those harsh reality, being like, oh, now you
Right.
see,
Right.
therefore I'm here.
Yeah. I also feel like, when you said that, I kind of didn't have anything else to rely on. I'm kind of stubborn, right? That's honestly, I think, when a lot of us experience God the most, because then we don't have anything else to rely on. We've gone through every single thing that we can possibly hold on to try to navigate through certain situations in life itself. And then there are these moments where we're just kind of brought to our knees. And I think being quarantined and isolated, this is what, week 8 now.
Yeah.
I feel every bit of that weight, because for a while it's like, okay, it's new, I can adapt to this. And now it's like, oh my gosh, I don't have anything left in my reserve tank. And it has really brought me to my knees. And I think, having these moments of seeing God in one way is just going to keep meeting you in different chapters of life. So I love that you felt like really hit by this invitation at age 16 and all of its seriousness. And here we are in our 20s, and we're still experiencing these moments where it's like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
this is how God wants to work through me now. This is how God is directing my decisions now. This is where He's taking me now. And I
But
just
by
love
any
that.
means, I am not figured out. I
No,
still
yeah,
struggle, and I think it's so important for everyone to know that, because
yeah,
we all know those perfect Christians,
right.
and we were
I
no
can't
one's
stand it.
perfect. Like, we, even though I have learned a lesson, it's still struggle. It still take me a lot of
Yeah,
strength to really listen to God, because
yeah,
often what God wants might not be what you want. And
yeah,
it still take me hard. So I can't say
absolutely.
I'm just seeing God here and there.
Right,
Yeah. Which, just
right.
want to make
But
that
it's,
clear. Um,
yeah, no, that's good clarification, because I think that's what's so hard, is like not being able to hear from Him every single time we want to, or the way that we want to, but that He
yeah,
does just meet us in different times in different
yeah,
ways. Like, it's just a journey itself. So having
yes,
one moment of clarity at 16 is going to look so different at like 27 or longer,
mhm,
it's just so
for
different all
sure.
the time. But that actually leads me into my next question for you, which is, how, you said, like, listening to God. So how do you listen to Him? What does that process actually look like for you?
um Another very personal experience. I feel like everyone experiences him differently, and
Yeah.
just like just like languages, right? Like a different country speak a different language. God speak a different language to each one of us.
Hmm.
Like his love language or his care, like, come to us in all different ways. I'm so sorry. It's still New York, even though quarantine time.
No, you're fine. There's like someone mowing their lawn out back. There's like a dog fight next to me, just like two dogs barking, having a crazy conversation. It's perfect timing. It's all right.
All right. But I mean, someone might be, God might speak to them by those things. Who knows?
Right. Who knows?
Everyone's different. And
Yeah.
I am not like, it's pretty, this is a little ashamed um, to say to just to, what's the word? Identify myself with. I'm not a
Yeah.
reader. I hate
Hmm.
reading. I
Hmm.
really hate reading. So reading the Bible really gets me. Not just
Yeah.
even reading English, like not just reading in the second language. I generally don't enjoy reading. And
Yeah.
it's horrible. When I say that, like I never really say it out loud to a public. Like I
Hmm.
share with my friends. but it's the first time I shared to everyone that I'm not a reader.
Yeah.
So I understand a lot of people read the Bible for a closer relationship with God, which I think that's
Mhm.
the best way, because that's literally his word.
Yeah.
But for me, it's a little harder that way. And maybe that's why I'm drawn into the visual arts. So
Mm,
I
I love
really
that.
find my moments in image, in the visuals, to hear from God, really.
Yeah.
I still try to read my Bible, and actually one thing I try to do with my friends every now and then is to Bible study one chapter, but then use that chapter to find visual
Mm,
the throughout the week, which is
wow.
it's very abstract, like, because you
Yeah.
can't really put any, like, sometimes the Bible just says nothing. Like in the Kings, they just like name after names after names,
Hmm.
but we try to dig in, like we try to dig deeper and deeper and deeper that way, to
Right.
find out what that really means to us in the
Yeah.
visual sense. And when I made that translation into my mind, and somehow this will work, so I will go out there with my friends or alone to use my eyes to find a moment where God speaks to me. And
Hmm.
that's actually how I serve at church. So
Hmm.
I started just to go to church to Hillsong, New York City. And my friends mentioned me to the creative team, saying that I do take photos. And they recruit me to take photos. And the first week I've ever done, and I never thought, I thought it was a job. I didn't think
Yeah.
of it as any type of worshiping. And I was holding my camera in this dark room. Hillsong's very charismatic and very
Mm,
glamorous. The stage is like the center of the light.
yeah.
Um, I was There's a voice in my heart. I
Mm,
don't know what that means by a voice in my heart. It's just there was a desire, a thought, an idea that I should look for something that's behind me,
mm,
instead of facing the light to people are worshiping on stage. Instead, I should be turning around and see how people are worshiping. And that led to me going into a crowd, disguise myself,
yeah.
and just seeing this whole new world. And I
Hmm.
still get chills when I remember, like, when I try to get back to that memory.
Yeah.
It was unreal, because everyone who were they are in the dark.
Hmm.
They they were very vulnerable, and they put out every faces, every mask, every disguise, and just lift up their hands and worship him
Yeah.
with whatever they have in their hearts, whatever they're going through. And you can see it.
Hmm.
It's a very strange thing that you can really see it in their worship. And they probably would never thought they will, by use like by used by God, was used by
Yeah.
God to tell another person anything. But at that moment, God was using every single one of them worshiping to speak to me. And
Mm,
I can't remember what my heart was troubling that week, but
yeah.
by seeing that, God was telling me everything. He was telling me that he was real, and he was telling me that he was worth to be
Mm,
worshipped. He was telling me that he has the power to comfort every single heart in this room. He was
oh,
telling
wow.
me that he was there with every single of them. He was walking with them. He was carrying them on their ways.
Mm.
He was just in every
Whew.
single one of them. And
Yeah.
throughout the whole thing, people are probably thinking I was really serious of taking the picture, because my camera was on my, like, in front of my face the whole time. But the
Sure.
truth was, I was crying
Yeah.
the whole time through. Not even just during worship, like even during the sermon, people, some words that just hit people's hearts, and
Hmm.
they start putting their head down, and they start just wiping their tears
Right.
and having a moment with God, and just finding out what they have sinned, and really lift everything to God. Like every single thing, you see it. I see it through the lens, and it's in the frame that God was just there with them.
Yeah.
And I was crying and crying and crying throughout. Then I realized that's what God's language to me.
Oh,
He gave me a talent of an eyes to see,
yeah,
and he gave me a talent of knowing how to operate a camera, and he's right there.
yeah.
He's speaking to me through that lens.
Whew.
Thank you. Whew, thank you.
Sissy, I have
Seven
chills.
o'clock. And everyone's clapping. Not for me, but thank you.
Sissy, I have chills, seriously. Like, as you were just describing all of that, I mean, just being able to, like, place yourself in that setting where it feels like it's just you and God. I mean, that is so huge. And it's encouraging, Sissy, to hear that, like, you know, you are so creative. And so sometimes, like, reading the Bible, you don't get much. And I think that's okay. Even though it's so important, like you said, it's still important to know God's word and to be in his word, reading it, right? But when you truly feel this connection, it's actually like taking that scripture and applying it to how God meets you. I mean, that's so encouraging. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to ask one more question,
Mhm.
and that is just share some sort of moment and experience where you felt like God truly met you. I know the previous question was, how do you hear from him, right? What is
Mhm.
another way where he has just met you in this one moment and you're like, oh, that's nothing but God right there?
I mean, there were so many.
Yeah.
Literally, by the littlest choice in my life, you can see that, oh yeah, that was God. And the biggest decision in my life, as for example, coming to America, it was God. But one thing I would say that just blew my mind, it was that one time, well, actually pretty recently, before that everything happened, I had a very tiring journey
Mm,
uh, coming back to the States.
yeah.
So I was taking my vacation in Europe with my parents, and for some reason, everything just doesn't line up together, and visa is having a lot of trouble, even though everything should be working, but just not working. And
Hmm.
you know, those moments, it's a lot of why God, why God, why, and
Yeah.
why me, God. Lots of those questions were asked, and I was blocked outside of the country for over, I think I was over a month or two,
Oh my
just not
gosh.
able to come back.
Yeah.
Um, and there was a lot of just lots of questions, and therefore lots of prayers going to it, and lots of people praying for me.
Hmm.
And by the process, I've unfortunately lost my job
Oh,
because
yeah.
not being present in the country to do the work.
Hmm.
However, my visa was very closely tied to my
Yeah.
job, which is not a good news for me, knowing that I would need to go back to China to the US Embassy for an interview about my work, about
Hmm.
my job in the US, which I'm not sure if that should be on the internet, but um, yeah, so I was going back to China for that interview.
Hmm.
So hopefully, hoping that I will grant it with a new updated visa to come back to the States.
Hmm.
I was
Yeah.
extremely nervous to go in that interview because I know the truth is I do have to lie a little, and which everything was true, but then everything was unfortunate. I just hope that they will understand. Like, I hope
Yeah.
they will understand all the circumstances that has come to me, and all the work I've put into this, a
Right.
very human side of me. And
Yeah.
I was like, God, so I do have to lie a little, but I'm not truly lying. I'm just debating everything to
I'm
me,
just being vulnerable. I'm being
I'm just
transparent. Help me.
exactly. And I
Yeah.
was like,
Right.
so God, like, I don't know what to do. And the night before the interview, I was like, God, just put someone behind the counter for me.
Mm.
Like,
That's a
just,
bold prayer, Sissy.
I know,
That's
I don't know what
bold.
else to say. Like, I just want someone who's put there by God. And I know
Yeah.
if that's the case, it will work.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think that much when I pray. and they just gone through, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
next day I was in the embassy, and then I was waiting in the line, finally got to me, handed my passport, and they were flipping through my passport. They saw the town that I was in for my student visa was called Houghton.
Mm-hmm.
And that town is a very small town where I go to college, which has less than 1,000 people, a very small town in the middle of nowhere, upstate
Yeah.
New York. And they were just like, where's Houghton? It almost
Where's
doesn't look
this?
like a real name.
Where is she from? Yeah.
I know. And before I even answered, there was this guy yelling from the back room, from like the, it's kind of like a bank counter. It's like glass
Gotcha.
door and like lots of people working. So there was like this voice. There was like, you
Yeah.
don't know Houghton? I was like, okay. And
Crap.
someone ran up.
Yeah.
And I thought it was close to Christmas time. And I thought, oh, those poor guys who have to work in another country, who can't go back to this, to the home with their family. They're probably just making jokes.
Oh my gosh.
No.
So feeling even like more discouraged at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I always talk myself down so I don't be more disappointed when things don't happen. So they were like, where's you don't know Houghton, dude? And then this guy just kind of like, very dude, and like, hey, like, dude, you don't know Houghton? And then the guy's like, yeah, like, where's that? And turns out the guy who came up was from the area of my town.
Oh my gosh.
And
This small little town. What are the odds?
Like even people in New York State doesn't even know where that is.
Oh my
And he started explaining where the town is and how good the reputation the town is for, and how everyone there is Christian, and there was a lot of blessing by God, and how there is a Christian private school there, and it was a very highly rated in the academic world and everything. And he just started explaining, and that at the moment they actually have to shut off their mic and binder. I think they were just getting really friendly and just talking about their life at the moment.
Right. So, and you can't hear anything. You don't know what's happening.
Hear anything. So I was like, oh Lord,
yeah,
and
terrified.
I don't know what's happening, and blank. Next thing I know, they open the blind. They hand me a stamp. They hand me a letter saying, okay, everything should be ready in a week.
Oh my gosh.
Nothing really processed my mind.
Yeah.
Until I walked out, like probably 1 kilometer outside of the embassy, and I was still walking and just like, okay.
Yeah.
And then suddenly hits me like, so my prayer was literally telling God, asking God to put someone behind the counter. I thought that by that means a Christian or believer or like someone with a kind heart.
Yeah.
But he literally put someone behind the counter for me, just for
you.
me.
Sissi, I again have chills. This is just crazy. And so like that's a bold prayer. And you did it. And he met you there.
I didn't know the power.
Right.
And I guess I should have known better. Oh God,
we always learn.
So literally. So
yeah. I also, something that you said too was that because this is such a stressful time, you had so many questions. And you said, which meant there were a lot of prayers. And that in itself, Sissi, is so encouraging to hear someone say, yes, I have faith, but I also have a lot of questions. Yeah. And I think people who are Christians sometimes are afraid to admit that they have doubts, that they have questions. And I think questions are good because that's what causes you to seek. That's what causes you to find answers. And so not only did you have questions, but you didn't allow yourself to be like in this frozen state of fear. You actually use those questions for prayer, and God met you with those bold prayers. Sissi, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing all of that. This conversation with you has been so life-giving and encouraging for me. And I do also want this to be a platform for people to know a little bit about what you do as well. So you're very, very creative. Is there like a website or Instagram page where we can see some of your creative work that you do?
Sure. Yeah, I actually recently redid my website, which is www.sissilu.com, sissilu.com. I'm so happy I got that name, that domain.
Yes. It's a fun
And
name. I love it.
I love it too.
Yeah.
And yeah, Instagram is where I'm most active. So feel free to see me there. Sometimes you can also see my work on Host on New York City or Host on global websites or their social
Awesome.
media platforms. So yeah,
Great.
I'm glad to reach the
So,
parts that way.
yeah. Oh, it's such a blessing to see your work, seriously. So, I will go ahead and put that website and your Instagram name as well in a little bio for this video so people can check out the work you do. But
Thank
Sissy,
you.
thank you so much for giving us this encouragement and for being transparent. We need
Of course.
vulnerability and transparency in this world to keep moving through our faith and navigating together. So, thank you so much, and
Thank
we'll talk
you.
again.
Thank you. And again, I want to also say, by
Yeah.
answering those questions, also help me think and help me count the blessing that God has put in my life. And I think it's so
Great.
important. So thank you so much for letting
Absolutely.
me to share.
Absolutely. Sissy, you take care. We'll talk later.
Thank you. Bye
All right.
bye.
Bye.